And I will say that ego is necessary in the human experience. But the problem is, most of us are running the show with our egos, and most of us are operating from a wounded ego. The covert ways of the ego. When we think of the ego, we think of more, especially when it's a wounded ego, we think of people being obnoxious. We think of narcissists, right? We think of people who are obviously very controlling, domineering. But then there's covert ways of the ego, which is really, really sneaky, that a lot of us are not aware of, that we really, really need to be aware of, and that we really need to tune into. And even the most purest, most loving ones of us can also be subjected to and dominated by our wounded ego in a very covert way. So today we want to talk about the covert ways of the ego and how it shows up. So that way you can be aware and we can start doing that deep, deep shadow work to really work on ridding the covert ways of the ego. So I'm so excited. So let's get into it. And this is very, very relevant into tapping into the golden age, because if we are not addressing these issues within ourselves, then there's absolutely no way that we can be in the golden age, because the golden age is a frequency, it's a state of consciousness, it's heart-centered living. And if we are operating from our wounded ego, like so many of us in humanity have done, whether unconsciously or consciously or subconsciously, then we will not be entering the golden age. And we want to finally have our peace in this life, and if not this life, eventually we're going to have to face it eventually anyway. So let's go ahead and get into it. So I'm so excited. So let's first talk about the ego. So the ego, for one, when it's wounded, it means edging God out, edging God out. So, and I also want to say that ego in its creation and its essence, as part of being in the human experience, is inherently, it's not supposed to be toxic or bad or something that's supposed to be working against us. It's supposed to be working for us. And I will say that ego is necessary in the human experience. But the problem is, most of us are running the show with our egos, and most of us are operating from a wounded ego, meaning that we've been hurt, we are carrying on past traumas, we are, to some degree, a lot of people are suffering from narcissistic personality disorder. And if not, they're not fully consumed by narcissism. They have those narcissistic tendencies, right? So it's really, really important that we learn to be aware of self, especially if we want to liberate ourselves from the inside out and we want to have heart-centered living. It's really, really important that we continue to be honest with ourselves, continuing to do the shadow work, have complete unconditional love, and know that we can get our ego to work for our heart and our soul. It's supposed to be this beautiful trinity that's working together, so that way we can truly be our optimal best self. So yeah, that's what the ego is in general. It's edging God out when it's wounded, but the ego, when it's healthy, it really empowers you, but it's not power over others energy, if that makes any sense. It empowers you to empower others. It empowers you to no longer play small. It empowers you to no longer also, I don't want to say play big, because you're supposed to play big, but not, again, big in terms of like over competition or I'm the number one authority. That's played out. Okay. That is the dark ages, right? That when we're stepping into the golden age, the ego is working healthily. It knows who it is. It really protects you from in a human standpoint, because we are in this human life. We are in a body. So it will protect you, but not from a place of paranoia, or not from a place of, illusory protection where we think we're protecting ourselves, but we're really blocking ourselves. So I want to be clear. You can still be a good person and still be in your ego. I want to be very, very clear on that, because that is a misconception as well, that the only people who are ego dominant are people who are just, so-called bad people or negative people or people who are always looking for drama, just people who are not seeking that harmony. And my apologies if you heard some static from my microphone. It's very sensitive, so bear with me if I accidentally tap it. But yes, the ego can affect all of us, even the most purest souls, if we're not aware and we haven't done that deep shadow work. So let's talk about one of the first examples of how the ego can show up covertly. Victim mentality, huge. And so it doesn't mean, and I want to be clear, we're not negating the fact that bad things have happened to you, people have mistreated you. All of that can be very real, and we should have compassion for that, and we should acknowledge it, and we should address it. The problem is that when we go through so much turmoil and pain in life, we tend to hold on to that identity in terms of being a victim, and then we use that as an excuse for, not loving ourselves or showing up short, or whatever it is, right, where we're just not being our best selves. And that is such a huge covert ego way. It's like the ego is saying that, I have an excuse to, for one, treat you rudely because you treated me rudely. I have an excuse to be lazy because I went through a hellish life. I had a horrible life. And trust me, I understand. And we should all have compassion for that. And if we're honest with ourselves, do you think that you're supposed to just go through life and not optimizing your fullest potential? Absolutely not. Just because you have been through horrible things does not mean that you cannot show up in your highest and best light. And it will take a lot of inner work. We know that. All of us, especially as pure hearted souls, we've been through betrayal, we've been through abuse, we've been through whatever it is, the worst of the worst, right? To various degrees, some worse than others, but it's not a competition. What in terms of like who went through the worst versus whoever, right? But what I will say is that there are so many people who went through literally hell on earth, like horrendous things like that could have killed them. And they are triumphant. And they're still shining their beautiful, brilliant, bright light, and they're still keeping their heart open. So, a victim mentality is that everybody is out to get you, and everybody is mistreating you, and the world is doomed. I'm such a victim for whatever reason. Victim could be like, I'm black, I'm poor, I'm whatever, right? All these, I'm a woman, I grew up in a third world country, I'm whatever it is, right? All the different stories we tell ourselves that keep us in a limited position. So it's so important to be aware of that, because we forget who's really in control, who really has the real authority beyond color, beyond any of the circumstances. It is our heart, our inner heart. It is our soul. It is that connection to the divine. That is what's going to open miraculous doors for you. But for one, you have to believe in yourself, and you have to know yourself. And it's going to take work. But if you think that you're on this earth to suffer, I'm telling you from the bottom of my heart, nothing could be further from the truth. You have to honestly be real with yourself and tune in and say, you know what, this doesn't make sense. I am meant to live a great life, and I'm not a victim. And I'm not going to go around being on the defensive with everybody as well. I'm going to be real with myself and honest. And like I said, I'm not saying that the world has not been cruel and horrible to all of humanity and to different groups of people. We know that, and we are never going to sit here and ignore it and lie about it and pretend it doesn't exist. But what we are going to do is we're going to take our power back. Okay? So